If you are listening to this and you feel a strange sense of recognition, like something is being named that you've felt but never understood, stay with me. Because what we're about to unpack is one of the least discussed yet most powerful psychological mechanisms used in toxic and manipulative relationships. Verbal hypnosis, not as a trick, not as a performance, but as a systematic reshaping of perception through language. Most people assume manipulation is obvious. Raised voices, threats, control. But the most effective psychological control never feels aggressive. It feels reasonable. It feels logical. It feels caring. That is why verbal hypnosis works. At its core, verbal hypnosis is the use of language to bypass conscious resistance and directly influence emotional interpretation. The human brain does not experience reality directly. It experiences meaning, and meaning is constructed through words. When someone controls the language around an experience, they begin to control how that experience is processed. In the early stages, verbal hypnosis is indistinguishable from emotional intimacy. The manipulative individual asks deep questions. They listen closely. They remember details. They echo your emotional language back to you. This is not accidental. Psychologically, mirroring creates a sense of sameness. Sameness creates safety. Safety opens influence. Your nervous system relaxes, your guard lowers, and the mind becomes receptive. This is when suggestion becomes effective. They begin to subtly guide how you describe your own emotions. They might say things like, "You're not angry, you're just hurt. You're not disappointed, you're afraid. You don't actually want distance, you want reassurance." At first, this feels supportive. They're helping you understand yourself. But over time, your emotional vocabulary shifts. You stop naming what you feel. You start accepting what you're told you feel. This is the beginning of external emotional authority. Once that authority is established, the second phase begins. Perceptual destabilization. Here, contradictions are introduced slowly. Their behavior does not match their words, but their explanations are confident. They say they care deeply, yet dismiss your pain. They say they value honesty, yet deny things they clearly said. They say they respect you, yet undermine your boundaries. Your brain searches for coherence. And when it can't find it, it experiences cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is deeply uncomfortable. The mind seeks resolution at almost any cost. And here's where verbal hypnosis deepens. They offer the resolution. They suggest that the problem is not what happened, but how you perceived it. That the issue is your interpretation, not their behavior. Because they speak calmly, confidently, and repeatedly, their version begins to feel more stable than your emotional experience. Stability feels like truth. This is reinforced through repetition. The same phrases, the same reframes, the same dismissals. Over time, your mind begins to preemptively adjust. You reinterpret events before they even respond. You soften your reactions. You doubt your memory. At this stage, the hypnotic effect no longer requires their presence. The pattern is now internal. The third phase is identity erosion. Language shifts from describing behavior to describing you. You're dramatic. You're insecure. You're unstable. You're impossible to please. These labels sink deeper than criticisms because they define who you are, not what happened. And once identity is questioned, resistance collapses. The brain prefers a painful identity over no identity at all. So it accepts the label. You begin to behave in ways that align with it. You apologize more. You explain yourself endlessly. You tolerate things you never would have before, not because you agree, but because the internal reference point has shifted. This is advanced verbal hypnosis, where the victim becomes self-regulating. Now comes emotional dependency. The manipulator alternates between invalidation and validation. Criticism followed by reassurance. Distance followed by closeness. Your nervous system learns that relief comes from them. Not from clarity, not from truth, but from approval. This creates a loop. When they withdraw, anxiety rises. When they return, relief follows. Your brain links relief with compliance. This is not emotional weakness. This is neurobiology. Dopamine spikes during unpredictability. Oxytocin spikes during reconciliation. The bond strengthens even as the self weakens. At this point, language becomes deeply embedded. You hear their phrases in your thoughts. You judge yourself in their tone. You explain your own pain the way they would. This is why leaving feels so disorienting. The voice didn't stay with them. It stayed inside you. Breaking verbal hypnosis is not about confrontation. It's about separation of voices. You learn to ask a simple question. Is this my experience or their interpretation of my experience? You slow down emotional processing. You stop rushing to explain or justify. You allow discomfort to exist without translation. Because hypnosis thrives on speed and awareness slows it down. You reconnect with bodily signals, confusion, tension, exhaustion. These are not signs of failure. They are signs of misalignment. As you stop accepting imposed meaning, clarity returns gradually. Not as certainty, but as stability. Your thoughts feel less urgent. Your emotions feel less chaotic. Your sense of self feels quieter, but stronger, and eventually, something shifts. Their words lose their power, not because you disprove them, but because you no longer need them to define reality. That is the end of verbal hypnosis. If you've stayed with this video until now, it means part of you was already waking up. This channel exists for that part of you, the part that wants understanding, not blame, clarity, not confusion, and a way back to yourself without force.